Okay. Anything preliminarily we might need to sign? Okay. I didn't say the word. All right then. Let us open the public hearing. The applicant is Blackstone United Methodist Housing Corporation, requesting their property be conditionally rezoned from public and open space to R3. Mr. Van Orbeck, can you?
Well, I want to make sure that you understand the conditional part is not so much to put lots of conditions, but it does give you the ability to put conditions on a rezoning. So oftentimes I'll just put that in there, not for a specific purpose or a reason, but sometimes, or for the collection of cash proffers or any of those kind of things. But if there was
Such as
something,
curb and gutter?
pardon?
Such as curb and gutter?
Or other things, but I think that would hopefully be an agreement between us instead of a backup. But it is advertised as conditional, so if there were some conditions you'd like to put on it, you can. I'm not recommending any proffers or any of that sort of thing, or off-site improvements specifically, because I really can't. And we can't mandate off-site improvements. I don't know if you knew that or didn't know that. And as you can see, there's a proposed development of 24 units. I think there's two diagrams on here, one being a survey and one being a diagram of the units. This is the larger of the two. That one's folded up. That should be the very last page. Not that one, but behind it. And I'll try to explain. This is the current entrance into Peel Manor.
Right.
Okay, and this would just be a turn, a left-hand turn off the current. It's a pretty steep slope in there,
The left hand towards UMac.
behind UMac kind of.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And they reserved this 3-acre piece of property, the Methodist Housing Corporation, when, I should say they reserved it, when the Methodist Church disposed of the UMac property, when DMM Properties, which is Louis DeNito's outfit, bought the property, at the time, and I don't know if it was in the Housing Corporation's name or.
It was it was originally in the Methodist churches, the UMacs, and they purchased it from them.
Okay, so it was a 3-acre reserve that has been sitting there for some time. I'll show you on the map here. It's more of this property down here. You can see that's current Peel Manor.
Right.
Maybe not exactly the scale, but that's current Peel Manor. As you come down 4th, you got that curve right there, Freeman. And then you have another curve and it becomes Hungertown Road. Okay? And remember, those houses on Hungertown are in the county, on town utilities, but in the county where Wayne and Mitchell lives. If anybody knows where that's at. This would be the existing Peel Manor, and this is a portion of that property to the rear. Okay? If you look at that drawing, it abuts the cemetery. If I'm not mistaken right there. Okay? So it's this, which is still zoned POS, public open space, which VMAC, churches, cemeteries, for example, have always been zoned that public open space. And town buildings, municipal buildings, maybe a school, perhaps, yeah. Riverwood Sports Center, sports complex, that's shown as public open space. Okay. So it really has no zoning, but it had the same zoning if you remember when we rezoned the property for VMAC for negative renovation.
Is there a field there now?
I think it's field and woods. I think it is between the two.
Yeah, part of it is like a grass field, and then the woods start, and then it starts to drop off in the back.
I've got the drawings here, and I think it does show a little bit of a tough diagram. This came off the plans, the site plans that were prepared. If you look at it, here's the current entrance from Peel Manor coming in, okay? And you can see this is that field, I think that's the tree line. It says limits of disturbances, that dash line. This will be your tree line right here. So it's partially wood and partially open.
So will this open directly up to the back of VMAC property?
No, because if you remember, VMAC originally bought 11 acres, or I should say Blackstone Hotel Partners,
Right,
I think,
right.
bought 11 acres. They have subsequently bought another tract, and it will abut the subsequent tract that it just bought, and we just closed on.
Well, as far as being against the other track, is that, I guess, is that basically an open field there?
The predominance of it is an open field, yes. And it's got that, horse stable.
Yeah.
If y'all ever been back there behind it, it's a very old structure, I think was used as a horse stable at one time. That's on the residual of it. If you're familiar with the sewer line, comes in from behind you,
Yep.
that's pretty close to the property line going down through there, along that creek right there.
Is there any plans to build a privacy fence to separate that? Or,
A privacy fence?
I mean, like some kind of, like, just for the houses, just to kind of separate it from, like, you're talking about the whole horse stable and all that kind of stuff.
Well, the horse stable, I think ultimately, I think they intend on renovating, turning it into something associated with the building. It's not required as a residential to a residential, but I think when we go to the commercial, like the mini storage adjacent to a residential, I think there are some screening requirements already built in.
Okay,
And the zones that they would go to are,
Either BG, which is for the hotel, or if they want to go more of apartment style on this, if VUMAC ever expanded, then it would either be the same zoning that they have or a higher or more intense zoning.
this will not be like the same thing that they came here arguing when Duncan was doing this thing, man. Those properties that they had to have something up.
This is going to look exactly like Peel Manor. Are you using any low-income housing tax credits, or is the intention?
Yeah, the intention is to use LIHTC, credits, yes.
Okay. So if you're familiar through Virginia Housing Development Authority, they provide things like low-income housing tax credits to help pay for these. Just recently, we've had 3 low-income housing tax credit projects in the town that I can tell you of. Not only Manor was renovated, Magnolia Place was renovated, and Cole Harbor was renovated recently using low-income housing tax credits. Another reason, perhaps, for the conditional rezoning, when we had this conversation, the mayor contacted me and wanted to know, was it income restricted? And I think the answer is
60%, it's 60% of AMI is what our typical are, and it is age restricted.
And the second commitment or indicator that I received from Mr. Cadillac was it was 62 or older. And if you wanted to make that into a condition, I think you'd be within, if proffers are voluntary, and if they were willing to say, we'll commit that it'll be 62 or older, if that's important to the planning commission, that can be one of the conditions or proffered conditions.
I think Mr. Miller is asking here about D. Duncanson and Will Rutledge. Is it gonna be something like that?
See, that's what I was.
Whoa, no, I didn't get that part.
Yeah, this is what I'm asking, because they came up here 3 or 4 times after this was done. So my question was, would he have to?
Do a variance?
I think if you look at the D. Duncanson situation, that was a condition of, and you guys may have been on there when that was done, and it's become quite contentious, but those apartments, those one-story apartments that D. Duncanson was building on Man Street, were within sight of Wilma's home. And I think there was actually even a trailer there at one time. And it was very close, and so D was required to maintain a buffer as part of the conditions that were agreed to at the Planning Commission and Council. And for whatever reason, the trees were cut down. He had some trees there, and our guys cut them down. I wish it weren't so, but we did. This was up in the power line, and D said, why don't you just cut them down? And I don't think Dan knew that they were part of a rezoning obligation, and D probably knew, but Dan didn't. So he cut them down, and Wilma immediately became
Very hostile.
enraged. Yeah, hostile. Yeah, she was pretty hot. And D didn't fix it, so it didn't get better until he finally, an appeal to his attorney, got a fence put back up.
So, but are you requiring them to do?
It's not mandatory. Unless this body chooses that to be a condition, or if Mr. Cadillac proffers that as a condition.
There's no existing housing. There's no existing housing anywhere close.
There is no existing housing anywhere close. And Mr. Patel, who owns the hotel, he's been given a copy of all this, and he received this in the mail. And I even followed up with a phone call and said, you got any problems with it? And he said, no.
So Peel Manor, is that 62 and older?
Yes, it's 62 and older. That is a 202 PRAC project. That's a HUD project. this is projected to be a tax credit project. It may be HUD financing, but it'll be a Virginia tax credit project.
And tax credits, for example, in low-income housing may be different, but historic tax credits can reduce overall construction costs by 35% by doing that, by using the tax credits that are available. But they're very competitive, and part of what makes projects competitive oftentimes is that the zoning process in the town providing letters saying that it complies in all material respects with the town zoning ordinance and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the tax credits are helpful, it decreases the construction cost. You know, the tax credits decrease the construction cost, so that way it enables them to be able to provide the apartments at 60% of AMI, which is average median income. They still have to pay the rent, but it's 60% of AMI, so it's subsidized, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's, the construction's subsidized, but not the actual rent subsidized. They pay less.
And what is your name, sir, for our?
Mike Cadillac,
I'm sorry, say that again.
Mike Cadillac,
Okay,
With a
so
K.
like it sounds?
but okay, well, it's,
Here you go.
it's, spelled differently, but said the same.
All right.
So to answer the question, it's not mandatory, but with Dee and Wilma, that was part of the agreed upon terms and conditions of the zoning, that there would be a evergreen planting or a privacy fence built.
It looks like on the back side of this, you've got the sewer line easement plus the creek and
And the
a
wooded
lot of
area.
trees.
Yeah, and the wooded area,
Right.
which obviously we don't own that, but we're not gonna, obviously we can't cut it down, so it's, and actually we would prefer it to be wooded.
And then on the front side will be the hotel property.
Yeah, correct.
And that's that sewer line that comes out in front of the old place, right down there in the creek bottom.
Walked it many a time with the dogs.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
When we were putting the sewer line in there, I don't know if you knew this, but that was one of the best places to find bottles, old unbroken bottles from years back. I guess they threw stuff like that over in a ravine years ago. We put that sewer line in, we just dug up bottles by the
Wow.
handful. They're probably covered up by now, but years ago, there were plenty of them over there.
And
So-
I would assume this has been as far as I know, it's been a nice, quiet neighborhood.
I haven't had any reason to believe that Peel Manor is anything but pretty laid back. I don't, you know,
It is.
it's
That was my assumption.
utility customers, one day a week at least, they have a manager. You know, I get complaints about Magnolia Place because the air conditioning isn't working or the paint's chipped or peeling. I haven't had any complaints about
Peel
Peel Manor.
Manor's kind of laid back.
Yeah, it's very laid back. Older folks and,
I got a few friends that live up there. It's a type of neighborhood built for retirees.
Exactly,
Right.
and that's why we stayed with the 4-unit complexes. They have a little area outside that they can have a garden or whatever, and then, you know, everything's walkable. They love that. It's quiet.
if you were inclined and you would like to have some conditions on there, obviously screening can be one of them. But I would ask, if you are gonna do any conditions, and Mr. Cadillac's already agreed to provide us, at no cost to the town, some easements for the electric to get in there. Okay, because we'll need to come around from the back. And, if there are, he wants power, so I don't think it's a
So I don't-
a terribly
That's not a fight.
testy issue. I think
That's
that,
not a fight.
we can all agree on most of that stuff, but if you wanna see something also, if Mr. Cadillac can commit that it would be 62 years old or older, if you'd like to, you can include that as a,
I think we should conclude that.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. 62 or older. Okay, you okay with that as a condition? All right.
62 or older, if you wanna make it 55, that's fine too. 62 is fine.
Any other questions?
Well, you don't
Okay.
really see any need for any buffer in case the other hotel operation decides to expand.
Well, here's the deal. If the hotel operation were to expand, they'd be required to put up a buffer
Okay.
as a
that's-
commercial abutting a residential.
Yeah, I figured that's where we were headed.
Yeah.
It'd be getting closer. but
It would be the onus on the developer side, on the hotel side.
I'll make a motion that we approve this
Do we have to,
with
do we have to close the public hearing first?
Close the public hearing.
Okay. Public closed. Now,
I'll make a motion that we approve this conditional use permit with the 62 age requirement.
So moved.
okay. Got a motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Congratulations.
Right.
Thank you very much. This is a good project for the,
We think
This
so.
will now be referred to the council, and they will meet on September 19th, I believe, and I'll send another round of letters out to let everybody know.
and that would be like the final approval.
That
This
would
is
be
a
the final
recommendation from zoning.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir, thank you.
And good luck. Thank you. We're working on it. Gotta work through the work.
However, as Mr. Colburn was so fond, the elder Mr. Colburn was so fond of reminding us, they didn't have to comply with our recommendation.
That's correct. That's correct. And in Amelia, when I was the county administrator, they very rarely,
That was when they wanted to put a funeral home down there at that Church of God across from Heritage Home.
Yeah.
Was Doug on planning commission or council at the time?
He was on council.
Council.
Yeah,
He'd start his meetings with
see, prior to
Doug.
about 2000 or 2002, Amelia County didn't require any vote on a subdivision. They would just
Plop them in
plop
there.
up everywhere. Then we started doing conditional rezonings on all subdivisions so we could collect cash profits, which is a blood money payment that you gotta make when you get your building permit. And man, those meetings started going woof, they would whoosh. And, adjoining property owners didn't like it, the first time they had gotten a say in it, and, made it much more testy, for sure.
Okay. What else we have going on?
We have an application for a rezoning. Again, I put it as a conditional rezoning, if you would like
Are
to
we
put.
going to proceed with the public hearing?
I would like to do the public hearing, he's already paid for it,
Oh,
and then we can come back if you wanna table it, and I can give you the rundown very quickly what's going on, and,
okay.
if you just wanna table it for 30 days.
All right.
60 days.
Let us open the public hearing on the application of Benito and Carolina Aguilera to have a property conditionally rezoned from R2 to M1.
Right now, you've got, it's on Northwest Avenue. You can get it on.
So it's just like it'll be a random reconditioned, or conditionally rezoned, I should say, spot in the middle of that neighborhood.
Well, I probably would tell you this really is a bad idea, but right across the street is Rice Manufacturing. You got M2 across the street.
Well, it's across the
You
street,
got a
it's not on
church
the
right
same
there,
side
too.
as the neighborhood.
And you got a church down there too,
It's right next door to the church.
right next door to the church.
Right.
Right now, he's doing a mobile welding service. Jennifer has spoken with him probably more than I have on the application. He's doing a mobile welding, which is fine. He can work out like Thomas Payne does, he can work out himself or whatever. But he wants to open up a shop in his outbuilding. Other than saying no, because everybody gets a shot to come and make their case, it's a tough spot because M1 doesn't permit residential use. So,
Right.
and he lives there, he lives in a house right next to it, so, the only saving grace would be that M2, North American Reach property is directly across the street from that old,
And the
Taylor
old
Ramsey.
Taylor Ramsey
Taylor Ramsey.
property.
So is he wanting the whole property, including the house, turned to M1, or just where the shop
Yeah,
is?
no, I don't think you necessarily divide properties, I think it would be the whole property. But we'd have to figure out some way to make that house Jihad in the M1. It's not a perfect application, it's not a perfect situation. The man wants to work out of his house, and I think that's a noble cause, and certainly when Jennifer spoke to him, it's worth bringing to you guys to talk about. But instead of making welding shops and auto repair legal in every green area in town, which I think we learned with the adult care facility, that probably wasn't as palatable, that I'm proposing to you some sort of a rezoning to make it. And automobile repair welding shops are legal in the industrial district. And it's about the only way I can think of to make it work. If you want to table it, listen to Mr. Aguilar, maybe he can come to the next meeting or something.
I'd like to table it. I'm really hesitant
Yeah, I am too,
to
'cause you got a church.
allow this with residences.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
also hesitant.
I'm hesitant on that because you got the church over there, you got North American Beach down there.
But in fairness, maybe we can hear.
Yeah.
it.
Well,
If-
I'll be glad to hear from him. Have you heard from the neighbors? Are they,
And I sent up letters, and one of the adjoining property owners did call, but her trailer is on his property. And she was
In
just
addition to
concerned
her
that she was gonna have to move the trailer. She didn't care about that he was doing this on the property, she just didn't wanna have to move her trailer.
So his house and her trailer would be residences on a thing zoned for non-residential.
Yep.
That sounds ridiculous to me, but.
I don't wanna say, my philosophy for zoning is that it's not up to me to put somebody out and say you can't do it. My philosophy is.
Excuse me.
Not great, but let's sit down and see if everybody gets a shot, but, I don't think it's been, I don't know Mr. Aguilar's opinion or what his sense of it is, but he paid $250 and he'd like to talk. And I couldn't make it tonight, he was working the Danville.
I agree that with the, idea of tabling it and letting him speak.
The toughest part is the existing structures on the
Right,
houses on it.
absolutely.
How do you reconcile that? That's the toughest part to figure out.
exactly right.
So, but if we table it and for him to come and speak,
Mhm.
I'd like to see him actually be at that one.
Well, we hope that'll be the case. I think we had the same problem with the adult care center.
Yeah.
I don't think she showed up a time or two.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the next time we voted it down, she showed up after we'd already done
20
it.
minutes after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She came almost an hour late.
We will try to schedule it with something else. We've got a few others that are kind of floating around, people talking about doing stuff in town, and we won't call a special meeting just for this one. But the planning commission has 90 days to dispose
Okay.
of something, or it'll automatically go to council. So if you wanted to, you could table it for as much as 90 days, and then we'll see if we can get.
Drop it in their lap. Yeah. No.
So, but we
All
are,
right.
if y'all have any other questions or anything, this is the public hearing, so he doesn't have to pay $250 again.
Again,
So we
yeah.
do have,
Right.
this is the public hearing, so we won't have to have that again when he comes for the
If you
meeting.
paid for it, you might as well
Right.
not have to pay for it a second time.
I mean,
Okay.
would this be, I mean, is he talking about welding on cars or welding on?
I would think so.
It would be like to me, he's gonna do welding, and I don't know if it's gonna be cars probably, but he's also going to repair vehicles as well.
So the
In
question
his
is,
shop, that I have a picture in there of y'all.
I guess one question, it's not the only question, but how many vehicles could he pile up in a lot there?
Exactly.
Right.
Because it's a welding and auto repair.
I mean, we've seen
Right.
this before.
It
Vehicles
it
can
real
pile
cluttered
up.
and funky looking.
And they can pile up.
Yeah.
I've dealt with many of them.
You look at any auto repair shop in town, I think part of the problem is when they take the vehicle in to fix it, the repair person doesn't turn it loose till they get the money, so you get a pile of vehicles
So
sitting
then you
right
go to
there.
the Southside Transmission, or if it's, towing yards, you can see they get lots of cars and people haven't paid for them, and,
Yeah.
it's got some work to do. And,
Well, I think tabling is a good idea, but in general, I just don't see it. So,
Yeah.
I think
Tough. He's got a tough road to hoe.
There's industry down there.
All right. Any other questions? Well,
You guys
let's
have any questions
let
about
us-
development projects?
let us close the public hearing, and
do a motion to table it,
yes, I think we'll do that by motion. That'd be fine.
so moved.
Second.
I second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Do you have any questions about anything going on in town? Other than that standstill storm sewer project on South Street?
They still in Microsoft, huh?
Still Microsoft. He was supposed to be back today and he didn't. come back.
Jeez.
We've had our piece with the engineers and we need to get that done. Not that the world's turning on its head, but the road is rough as hell. We need
Yeah,
to
it is.
get it over with.
Yes, it is.
Get out of the road. Questions, anyone, anything? Nothing?
We still.
Man, the hotel's coming along, the inn looks like it's
Well,
coming
as I
along.
understand it, according to Mr. Patel, he does have some classes scheduled, Fast C classes scheduled for the first or second week of October. So he is, and I spoke with the contractor, the general PG Harris Construction, and their plan is to finish in the month of September.
Oh,
Ambitious, because a lot of outside stuff, but I think certainly the rooms and things have to
I
be
was
ready.
thinking that like August was like the time frame for it to open.
It was May, it was
Yeah.
March, it was.
Okay.
But he's got, actually, he couldn't get Fast C, and Fast C won't authorize the rental of these rooms until they inspect them. They gotta be kinda done
Right.
before he can inspect them, and so he's done enough that, he believes he's got, the vast majority of the rooms rented for 40+ weeks. So that's a good thing.
Whoa.
That's a real good thing. I haven't been inside, probably 2 months. I don't know if anybody else went on that tour on the inside, but he, about 3 weeks ago, he told me they were doing final finishes on the second, third floor and putting furniture in.
Looks like the apartments off Dinwiddie Avenue are just about ready to open up.
September 20th, he has
Yeah.
his walkthrough with Fast C.
Talking about, yeah, but that's for Fast C too. At first I thought it was for the public, but he says that's strictly Fast C.
It's for Fast C, but he is hedging his bets a little bit because he put in more of a kitchen
Oh.
than just a hot plate and a microwave.
Yeah.
He put actually stoves and things, so they didn't need to rent it. So, September 20th, he's got his Fast C walkthrough, like VMAG just did, at 2:45, and he asked if maybe we'd join him down there around 3 o'clock, so we'll put it on the calendar. It's coming along,
Cut
and
everything.
we hope he makes his application, building permit application to put his next phase in,
And that's called, what is that one?
Patriot Square.
Well, once you get more housing, what else is following that?
And Raj Patel and I was at the beach and, one afternoon, returning calls. We talked for quite a while. We really, really, really need people in the restaurant industry to.
That's what I wondered when that's coming.
But that's Virginia State, right?
You guys will probably see a rezoning application or a conditional use permit within the next 30, 60 days for a building downtown for some apartments. And the first floor will be a restaurant. If the application were approved. But the restaurant's legal now. It will be the apartments on the second floor.
I mean, that's good to have people living
We're getting a lot of
downtown.
interest
That's good.
downtown. We need
Yeah.
to really see some promotion with downtown. I'm
Yeah.
a little concerned about the empty buildings
Yeah.
down there.
We need like a bar and restaurant type thing so that the porch sliders can play.
Well, there will be a restaurant and tap room at the can shop.
Yeah, the bus shop.
If that can go.
That's a long way out, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just doing the demo now. Yeah, he's got
That's
a
what I'm
whole-
saying, that's a long way out.
Yeah, we're working on that thing down on Second Street. I've been battling with the telephone company to move the line and, you gotta pay us first and all that sort of thing. So
How about the Old Town Shop? How's that?
that's,
Oh,
they're just
that's
doing
what
the,
Yeah.
they're just gutting it right now.
Yeah.
All the material out of there, any metal and walls, dividing walls, any of that kind of stuff. It's basically just scrapped out now. And you can see there's a lot of concrete has been chipped out, laying in the yard out there. And I haven't been inside enough to know exactly where the concrete came from, but I'm suspecting it came from when you go in the garage door.
Yeah.
It's most visible on the west side or east side of the building. There were a lot of chases
Yeah.
in there with old electric banks and old utility banks and things. I think they were chipping some of that out.
Well, the apartments down the hill are
They're
coming along.
rock and
too.
roll, if we can get that telephone line down and get out of the way. We
Yeah.
have some progress, but we're struggling with that.
But he framed that in 2 weeks, look like.
He's almost done framing it, put the
Yeah,
trusses on,
just
but the
about.
telephone line's in the way. And every time somebody hits that telephone line, it busts our utility pole off. So I got the cable company on to move, but the telephone company took forever. And finally, I get a call from a guy down in Newport News or something, and it's a company called Lumen now. I don't know if you know that. It's not CenturyLink specifically, it's called Lumen. So we finally got the right guy, and needless to say, 2 weeks later, I've gotten an electronic instructions on how to pay for this up front. And so we're gonna do that.
The town has to pay for it.
Town doesn't have to pay for it, but if you remember when we sold the property to Mr. McCormick, the town gave him a $60,000 credit, if you remember.
Yeah.
And it'll come out of that $60,000. So it'll be part of the incentives that we provided. Remember, he had a big
Right.
water tank and
Yeah.
about 100,000, so the property was worth 40, and then there was a 60,000. We paid for transformers and tap fees and that and electrical or telephone relocation.
All right.
So yeah, we'll pay for it, but it's only because there was a
Plus there's a credit.
agreement ahead of time.
All right.
Exciting being on the
Come on.
planning commission.
I gotta.
Coming
Yeah, just
along.
make $50 in about 10 minutes. Very nice.
Are y'all ready
It's
to
good numbers.
adjourn?
You know the gateway.
We are ready to adjourn.
Okay,
If I
and
give 'em
it's
enough.
6:30 PM, so we will
Okay.
adjourn.
Sorry, Phil.
Yeah,
It was 30 minutes.
we went a solid 30 minutes. That's